Hi, Alex Polyak here. Dan Houser, one of the founders of Rockstar Games and the lead writer for most of the company's games, who left in 2020, gave a few surprise interviews. He appeared at Los Angeles Comic-Con, on Lex Friedman's podcast, and on British television. Dan shared a lot about the legendary Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption series, and I've compiled the highlights for you. Let's get started. Be warned that this video will touch on the endings of the Red Dead games several times, which may be an unwanted spoiler for some viewers. As we know, Rockstar planned to release story DLC for GTA 5. Mr. Houser confirmed this and clarified that the Agent Trevor DLC was approximately halfway completed before it was cancelled. There was also a plan to release zombie content in GTA 5, reminiscent of Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare. But all these plans were cancelled to focus on the development of Red Dead Redemption 2. However, Dan really liked the concept of such add-ons, and he especially wanted to release zombie DLC. Why does Red Dead 2 begin with such an unexpected and deep dive into a snowy atmosphere? The writer explained this as a desire to show players how different the new game is from the dusty atmosphere of Red Dead Redemption 1. Houser noted that of all the Grand Theft Auto protagonists, Niko is the most innovative and morally upright. In the GTA series, he is Dan's favorite protagonist. In other Rockstar games, his favorite is Arthur Morgan. Dan called him the best character he's ever written. Throughout the interview, it was clear that games like GTA 4 and Red Dead 2 are special to Mr. Houser. Dan also mentioned the protagonist of GTA San Andreas, praising young Melee for his superb performance as CJ, bringing him to life. Back to GTA 4. Interestingly, it turns out that Houser originally intended for Niko Bellic to die at the end of the game. This idea had to be abandoned for obvious reasons, as the game needs a living protagonist even after the final mission. However, from a story perspective, I personally agree with the screenwriter that Niko's death would have been a beautiful and somewhat logical conclusion to his story. Incidentally, Dan Houser was later able to implement this concept in the Red Dead Redemption games, creating a suitable replacement for the protagonists. And this is one of the reasons why he considers the final part of Red Dead Redemption 1's story to be one of his best works. He also named GTA 4, Red Dead 2, and the middle part of GTA 5 as his best creations. The latter is due to the fact that Houser places particular importance on how he and his colleagues managed to combine three completely different protagonists into a single story. Dan believes that this was a complex and unusual task for Rockstar, the importance of which not everyone understood. The game Agent was mentioned in the interview. Dan liked this project, but it was cancelled. During development, Agent had about 5 different iterations, but the spy story proved poorly suited to the open-world concept of the game. Mr. Houser shared some information about Gavin, a character in Red Dead Redemption 2, for whom an Englishman searches endlessly and fruitlessly across the map. According to the writer, while writing this story, Rockstar hadn't fully decided who Gavin was, but the idea was that his identity might eventually be revealed in a future game in the series. We now know that, according to the original concept, Gavin wasn't a figment of the Englishman's imagination, as many players assumed, but rather a character who simply remains behind the scenes while his friend wanders the country, shouting his lines in a hilariously odd way. Gavin! Dan also explained that when creating a game, it's difficult to predict what players will like and what won't. He's seen players ignore some cool characters. Conversely, characters the writers didn't attach much importance to sometimes become popular among the fan community. Therefore, Rockstar comes up with dozens of different funny things, hoping that some of them will attract players' attention. One of the very first moments Houser conceived for the Grand Theft Auto 4 script was the moment when Niko first arrives at Roman's apartment and talks about the war, while his cousin falls asleep at the kitchen table. While there's no direct indication of Niko's nationality in the game, Dan made it clear that the story is about a Serbian immigrant. Yes, I realize that was already obvious, but there are still various theories within the fan community about Bellic's nationality, especially considering the various ethnicities of the Balkan region. Houser explained that he and other writers wrote missions in small chunks, which were then combined into coherent missions. Thus, over the course of a year and a half, about 15 missions were simultaneously being written. The scripts for the remaining several dozen missions were likely completed much more quickly. It was particularly interesting to learn how Dan's personal life and experiences influenced the writing of the stories for Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. For example, while creating Niko Bellic's story, the writer was in a state of emotional crisis. Dan admitted that, coming from the UK, he felt uncomfortable in New York City and seriously doubted he would ever live in the US. At the same time, he had experienced several unpleasant situations, and Rockstar was under significant pressure at the time due to the major hot coffee scandal in GTA San Andreas. In short, Dan had plenty to worry about. It was only after so many years that he looked back at GTA 4 and realized how his life situation had prompted him to make Nico such a dark character. Then Dan worked on Red Dead Redemption 1. At the time, his family life was rapidly developing, and he and his girlfriend were expecting a child. Hauser was thinking about becoming a father, and this influenced the story of John Marston, who has a family and a child, and cherishes them greatly. This moment plays a significant role in the game's plot. Working on Red Dead Redemption 2 also involved the screenwriter's personal experiences. Dan had once been impressed by the deadly nature of tuberculosis, which nearly killed his grandfather. While writing the script for Red Dead Redemption 2, Hauser decided it would be interesting to have the protagonist die gradually rather than suddenly. Thus, the tuberculosis storyline was conceived, showing Arthur Morgan's gradual weakening and physical decline. GTA 3 was briefly touched upon in the interview. Dan explained that during the game's development, its main publisher, Take-Two, was nearly bankrupt. It was so severe that the company didn't even have enough money to print enough copies of the game. However, initial sales were strong and continued for a long time, which helped improve the situation. Laszlo, a former Rockstar employee, still works with Dan, but at his new company. There, they are working on new and exciting projects, publishing books, comics, cartoons, and even video games in the future. Dan himself typically created the character of Laszlo in the Grand Theft Auto games, and now he revealed that with each game, he made the character more and more vile, although initially in GTA 3, Laszlo was quite likable. Dutch van der Linde is one of Mr. Hauser's favorite supporting characters. Dan said that when he wrote Dutch's script for Red Dead Redemption 1, it was just a few lines, but when he saw the actor play that small role, the screenwriter was able to see Dutch as a more interesting character, one with a larger story behind him. And as you probably already guessed, that story became Red Dead Redemption 2. Surprisingly, it turns out Rockstar Games was considering creating a medieval game with knights and all sorts of mythology. Although Dan liked the idea, but the company eventually abandoned it during discussions. I don't rule out that echoes of this concept may be present in Red Dead series, especially in the second game, as it features many mystical elements and references to the old days. Perhaps overall, Rockstar's concept was similar to the Witcher series. Do you know how long the script for GTA 4 is? I mean not only the main story, but also all the dialogue and lines, including ordinary pedestrians. Judging by the way Dan Hauser visualized the scenario, it was about a meter tall. I dread to think how tall the scripts for Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 6 must be. The writer noted that successfully combining story and open-world gameplay was crucial to their work. Unlike GTA 4, which emphasized storytelling, the most successful balance was achieved in Red Dead 2 and GTA 5, especially with Trevor. This protagonist perfectly combines an interesting story with its own conflicts, yet doesn't clash with the chaos he can wreak on the streets of southern San Andreas. Almost every GTA player has at least once imagined the series in a setting other than the American one, but Dan believes the series fits perfectly in the American environment, and its concept wouldn't be fully realized in any other setting. Even the GTA London expansion, he says, was challenging to create. What almost every Red Dead Redemption player has been thinking about is a third game in the series, but Hauser says he considers the first two games a complete story that doesn't need expansion. Therefore, he wouldn't want to see a third game connected to the previous two, but at the same time, he understands he can't influence it, and that a new game will most likely appear someday. Strange Man is perhaps the most mystical character in Red Dead Redemption. Players have made many different assumptions about him, and fortunately, Dan commented on this topic, although it didn't fully resolve the questions. Strange Man is a manifestation of the protagonist's karma. He effectively acts as the devil who comes for the sinner. And while this premise seems obvious, the character's identity remains a mystery. According to Dan, the man could have been someone who made a deal with dark forces and subsequently became like this. We also don't fully know whether he's capable of knowing about everyone, or whether he's limited to just a few, like Arthur and John. His personal history hasn't been revealed, and it may never be. Here's something about Grand Theft Auto. Rockstar paid attention to NPCs to a degree that its competitors didn't, yet they chose not to invest heavily in pedestrian voice acting. So, Hauser and his colleagues simply invited their friends to voice the characters instead of hiring actors. You might think this was an irresponsible approach, but in reality, the atmosphere of the games wasn't affected, and the NPCs were genuinely interesting, each with their own unique story. If you've watched the dedicated video series about this, you know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, I highly recommend them, because after watching, you'll discover the world of GTA in a whole new way. Finally, I want to share a very interesting quote from Dan, unrelated to games, but connected to more important matters. Lex Friedman asked Mr. Hauser what advice he could give to young people, to which he responded with these words.
Don't worry too young about your career. Worry about having a rounded intellectual inner life because you're going to spend a whole life in your own head. So the more interesting you find your own head, the more interesting you find the world.
If you enjoyed this video, please support it with a like and a comment. And for more interesting GTA content, subscribe to my channel and turn on all notifications. Thanks for watching. See you soon.